Everybody! Hey, I found my sleeves. They were in the laundry thing at the very bottom. I just assumed that I left them with the suit and the tie. But as you can see, I'm wearing the noisy tie. The suit, actually the room, very much, I called the hotel and yep, I left them there in the closet. Good on me. And it's kind of funny because I was like, they were like, what was it? Orange tie. They're like, oh yeah, that one. It's like, luckily my tie is a distinctive color, so it's like, yeah, it's the one with the orange tie. Oh yeah, the bright orange tie one. Yeah, we got that one. Unique, distinctive, it's good. So, that being said, this video, this is one that probably everyone was waiting on. The numbers. Everyone comes here for numbers. I like numbers, you like numbers. Numbers tell a story. And so obviously everyone's chomping at the bit, and they were even asking me on the Twitters. It's like, what do you think that Midwest Furfest will still take Anthrocon as the largest convention of the world? Because I've covered it on this channel for about a year and a half now. It was 2 years, and then it was after Midwest Furfest last year, it was like it's going to happen this year, and I have to say, yes, it is still going to happen this year, probably, but now more probably. So the numbers came in for Anthrocon, and they were pretty telling. Now I'm gonna go and open this, and my face is gonna disappear for a bit while I bring up these numbers for you, and we're gonna go over these numbers together because these numbers tell a story. And it all kind of started when the parade count came in, because the parade count comes in at late Saturday because they count their fursuiters by how many fursuiters are in the parade, and it was 1,800 this year. Last year it was 2,100. This means that this is the first recorded decrease in fursuiters at Anthrocon since they started recording. That's pretty significant. The question, of course, is why. And of course, when I'm just looking at those two numbers and I'm enjoying myself over the weekend, I'm not really thinking too much about it. So obviously I propose that question. It's like, well, has the attendance dipped as well proportionally? Or, was it too hot outside? People just couldn't stand it. They couldn't do it. Because it is a tough thing to do. But when I look at the numbers in a more extended fashion, I have a different story. The numbers tell me sort of a different story, and I'm going to share that story with you right now. So let me go and show you the numbers. So here is a chart of all the numbers. I can't read them, so you're going to have to read them for me, or some of them I have memorized. But because these glasses don't work worth the darn in the suit for some reason. But you could see here the chart of all the Anthrocon attendants and fursuiters. From its very beginning up until this just last week. So what you're going to notice here is that the attendance did increase. It didn't increase by the 14% it did last year, which was my projection, which I always project it based upon the percentage increase of last year. It's not very scientific. There's more scientific methods to use that take all the history into proportion. But mine's very basic. So basically, it did fall short of my projected numbers, which was 8,200, and it only got a 3% increase this year at 7,554. So that's only 500 more attendees than attended Midwest Furfest last year. We'll go over that in a bit. But the question here is well, it did increase in attendance a little bit, but then we kind of had a decrease in fursuiters. And I think that sort of correlates. So what you'll notice here is that, take a look at those numbers really quickly, that and the fursuiter column. You have the 1,400, then you have the 2,100, then you have the 1,800. So the 2,100 is sort of this weird outlier. It's sort of this strange number that doesn't really seem to agree with the rest of the chart, because we'd have an increase of 100 to 200 fursuiters a year-ish. At a pretty steady tick, but for some reason 2016 seems to be this strange outlier. So let me explain, and I'll go back to the main camera, as to why I believe that is. The reason I believe that is that 2015 was a very significant year for Anthrocon, and for fursuiters, it's one of those historical moments that should always be noted in sort of the annals of furry history. And that is, it is the first time a furry convention ever had a fursuit parade which branched out into a general, for the public consumption parade. In essence, Pittsburgh approached Anthrocon and said, we want you to bring your furry parade that you would have in the convention center, we want you to bring it out onto the street for the general public to consume. Not just your attendees, but for the general public as well, or people in the convention center, etc. So, that was pretty exciting, and they freaking went for it. And it's kind of the reason why Anthrocon will probably always stuck with the parade route, while, Midwest Furfest sort of went with the masquerade route. And there's more reasons for that I can get into, but that's a different topic entirely, logistically wise. So, Anthrocon's like, heck yes, we want to do this sort of thing. So, 2015 happened, and I attended that particular convention, and I had this fursuit at the time, and I experienced that fursuit parade, and I got to tell you, despite how hot it is to march in those things, despite how things, at the end of it, I cannot describe to you how freaking crazy it was, or how freaking pumped and jacked I was after experiencing that scenario. Because at the time it was there wasn't really barriers like there was this year. They're kind of the parade has somewhat become streamlined, which is good because safety and all this stuff. It's important that the people attending the parade know that they can't cross a certain barrier, so it doesn't get in the way of the fursuiters. It lowers the chance of injury. It keeps the parade going. Those are very important things. But at the time of 2015, the physical barriers on the street weren't really there. So, you really felt like you were going through sort of this, cool little thing where, people are like, oh my God, this is awesome. It's like that you actually feel like you're part of that crowd. And it was an emotion, and you interact with people, even if you have to do so in a quickly fashion, obviously, to keep the parade moving. But at the end of the day, it was an experience. And I shared that experience and talked about it a little bit. I didn't have a YouTube channel or anything where I could share it at a personal level. But if I was talking about it, even if it was to some random people who are like, yeah, dude, we're good. You can know that fursuiters were talking to other fursuiters about this parade, all right? They were like, dude, I don't care what you're doing next year, you got to get to this parade. It's like no other parade that you've ever experienced, because the only other fursuit parades, we're doing it for furries. So, furries have seen fursuit parades. So, they're kind of like, yeah, that one's cool, that one's good. But these people are like, oh my gosh, look at all these animal costumes. And every one of them, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. It's like there's just so much visuals and stuff like that. And so they get jacked, and you get jacked because they're jacked, and it's crazy. So people fursuiters are talking to other fursuiters, like, dude, I don't care what you're doing next year. You got to go down there. You got to go down there and you got to attend this parade. All right, you got to do it. You got to do it. So people are like, oh yeah, we got to do it. All right, so what happens? Well, 2016. We see this influx. We see this 43% jump in fursuiters. And yeah, we had a 14% jump in general attendance, but the fact is that the percentage of fursuiters increased by an order of magnitude, not an order of magnitude, but a lot faster than the general attendance rate. Which usually they're kind of pretty steady. I can't actually see the numbers to prove my point, or if I'm talking out my arse right now. But if you look at the other numbers, you're going to see that there's sort of a general sort of correlation with the percentage of fursuiters and the percentage of attendees and all that. But not that year. That year, fursuiters were like, we're jumping in on this. We're going to fur pile this Anthrocon 2016. And ironically, I wasn't one of them. So I was actually a loss of a fursuiter. And even despite that, they still increased 43%. So that's freaking crazy, right? So to me, when we look at 2017, 2016 happens and they're like, oh man, this happened. And we did it. We did that thing that I saved and scrapped to do. So now I can kind of, I could scratch it off my bucket list. It's kind of something I've done. So this is what happens, is that a lot of those fursuiters who went there to experience that said, well, I already experienced that, so now they're going to decrease. And this is what happened this year in my mind. And I think it even sort of had an impact on the general attendance sort of percentages as well. There are other factors that can have impacts on the general attendance. To the Ranting Griffins shows weren't going to be shown, and he has some followers, but I don't think that alone would account for the dip in things. The fact is his attendance still sort of increased despite anything, and that should be heralded as like, despite all the controversies surrounding Anthrocon this year, particularly that one, attendance still increased. And so. It sort of shows that despite some of the roughness and stuff like that, the furry fandom is still growing, despite, any weird conflicts we may have over who's has, shows and stuff like that. So, in essence, what I gotta say is that the most fascinating thing about this, though, and now we're gonna move on from the numbers to like sort of a general public discussion. This is something I've covered on this channel for a little bit. And so I'm not surprised by any of this. Like, it's just like, okay, I knew that this was going to happen. But now it's to the point where the general public now knows what I knew for a while. And the reason the general public knows more about it is because Kage, bless him for doing so, basically admitted that, the convention, the Midwest Furfest is hot on our heels, and they're probably going to overtake us as the largest furry convention this year, and so now, because he said it in closing ceremonies, basically anyone who attended the closing ceremonies now knows it's public knowledge. And on Twitter, it's even kind of public knowledge because people are acknowledging it. Now, there are obviously people who, there are people who are pro-Kage, there are people who are anti-Kage, because, he's a public figure. Public figures are going to attract people who, are going to attract opinions that basically are like, yeah, we're pro this or we're anti this, and I don't like this guy because he's got power and stuff like that. And Kage too is to, not to defame people who like disagree with Kage on things. I disagree with Kage on some things. People who make controversial decisions for their organizations are going to make controversial decisions. To me, the biggest controversial decision that kind of makes me go, is the banning of Video the Wolf for his release of the Fursuit documentary. That, to me, is approaching sort of a gray area, particularly since I cover furry nonfiction a lot. It's sort of a worrying concern that a convention could go, well, you were recording a video at our convention and you said something that our convention didn't like, and therefore our convention has the right to ban you because we're acting as the media, which to me wasn't really the original intent of the media rule. The original intent of the media rule was to protect furries from exploitative media outlets that were outside the fandom. That, to me, was the original intent of the rule, to protect them from the CSIs or the vanity presses of the world. Those kind of things, right? Because we were like, oh yeah, the press is so terrible, and so we need to have rules to protect us from terrible people in the press. Find it fair enough. But then that rule kind of got turned and ate one of our own, in my opinion. And that's kind of the one thing. Other controversial decisions he's made that have been, sort of thing. Obviously allowing the Ranting Griffin thing to fall through. Obviously, he's just kind of resigned himself that he's just a chair and that it's up to the entire board to start making decisions, even if he personally doesn't agree with them, because he personally doesn't agree with that one. Other controversial decision was removing adult pieces of, like, adult sculptures that are functional in nature, or adult items that are purely functional in nature. Contact me if you don't know what that means. Essentially, he basically got rid of Bad Dragon and any of those organizations that sell functional sort of anthropomorphic adult peripherals. That one I know, at least for I know, and I have my ear to the ground on a lot of the furry fandom. adult, general, whatever. Like, I have my ears to the ground on a lot of things, and I know that decision really put a stink on people who engage in furry, adult, things. That really, like, sort of was like an irk to them. But obviously, he might have wanted to take the convention in a different direction, made it more for the people of Pittsburgh. And I think that, in essence, it's kind of an interesting thing as well. There's a lot to talk about here, as you can see. The one thing I always say that Anthrocon has that Midwest Furfest doesn't really is its connection with the city. And I think that that relationship with the city is something that the con chair really, really fights for. And it does have a positive impact on the correlation between the furries and Pittsburgh. Chicago's Midwest Furfest really doesn't have that relationship, and I don't think it ever will. Heck, we were gassed in 2014, and I don't think anyone in main power in Chicago even wrote a letter going, "Yo, guys, I know you had a convention in our city, and this thing happened, and we as the city of Chicago apologize. It shouldn't have frickin' happened in our city, and we really, we apologize for that." There's been no real public letter like that, which, if anything, like that should be like if I frickin' was a mayor of a city and I learned that some organization was in there and they were suffered from a chemical attack, you bet your bottom arse I would be writing a frickin' letter and going, dudes, that should not have happened, and we apologize, and let us know if we can help at all to ensure that any future visits of your city in our city are safe, and that we and we'll be looking into it and doing that kind of thing. There might have been a letter, and it might not have been made public. I'm not sure, but like when it literally takes that kind of event, and even then the city doesn't really acknowledge that you're in there. It sort of was a national news thing, but it wasn't really localized. Whereas Pittsburgh, it's like they'll talk about furries before they even arrive. They're like, this weekend the furries are coming back. This weekend the furries are coming back, and then so they kind of have that sort of thing. I don't think Midwest Furfest is ever going to get that kind of press, right? I could be wrong. After it becomes the largest furry convention, that's the weird and strange and wonderful thing about this. As soon as Midwest Furfest becomes the largest furry convention in the world, I don't know what's gonna It's like I know how the fandom's gonna react because I've been in the fandom, so I know that there's gonna be like pro Kage detractors going, "Yeah, Anthrocon's dead. Yeah, suck it, Anthrocon, suck it. They would actually be using the middle finger, not the thumbs. But suck it, Anthrocon. Yeah, you deserve to be second place. Yeah, there's going to be those guys, and there's going to be guys that are like, to heck with you. Anthrocon is awesome, man. Midwest Furfest may be the largest, but Anthrocon's the best. It's going to be a Coke and Pepsi scenario. There's going to be people who enjoy one, there's going to be people who enjoy the other, and they're going to be very adamant about it, and it's awesome. Because it's great, because it means the fandom is growing into a part where we can actually have competing conventions. I pray that we have competing art sites in the same nature at some point soon. Because really, if any place in our fandom has stagnated for a long time, it's our furry internet art sites. And I really, 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 really want to see this sort of rivalry between Anthrocon and Midwest Furfest occur on our internet sites as well. That to me would be great. But yeah, I mean that's the thing too. So you're gonna have that, and that's how it's gonna happen in the fandom. But outside the fandom, how are the cities going to react? How is Pittsburgh going to react to know that they're gonna wake up someday in December and they don't know it yet? The people in Pittsburgh may not know it yet. But they're going to wake up in December of 2017 to having the second largest furry convention in the world against Chicago. And Chicago is going to wake up and learn that they have the largest furry convention in the world. How do both cities react to this? Do they just start up a rivalry sort of like us in the fandom? Does Chicago just go, well, they're still nothing because our frickin' city is huge, and they have even if they had 20,000 people at that convention, it still would be small potatoes compared to certain conventions that we have in this city. Whereas Pittsburgh, they don't have that, so they're still going to be passionate towards the furries, because there was one post somewhere that said that Anthrocon was the largest convention they've had at the Davis Lawrence Convention Center. I I gotta say, I've seen that facility. That's sort of depressing. And I hate saying that, but it sort of is. It's like that facility can fit so much more than 7,500 people. And we're the largest convention they've had this year? Any convention? We're a niche group. It makes me empathize with them so bad because it's like this city is striving to survive, and that's what it feels like, at least. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too real here, but it's like I would think they would have another convention that's larger. Any convention, like a sports convention, something that's larger than 7,500 people attending. But maybe it was an exaggeration. Maybe they did, because the numbers weren't in yet, right? The numbers weren't in when I heard that announcement, so I take it with a grain of salt. That it was like not somebody in the city trying to boost our confidence, but I hope that our convention is not the largest one you guys have, just saying. Because that convention center deserves, good business for more than just us for like a weekend of the year. But that being said, like I don't know how the cities or how the non-furries in those cities are going to react to this sudden shift in dynamic. And that to me is going to be the most fascinating thing. That to me is going to be, because I don't know it. Like the things I know, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Furries are going to be furries. There's going to be the people who are anti-kage. There's going to be the people who like Anthrocon and pro-kage and stuff like that. There's going to be those. But outside of our little borders, like how is the shift in dynamic going to impact the city around it? My educated guess would be, Chicago's not going to. I don't think they're going to embrace, and I don't think they ever will, as much as Pittsburgh does, because our convention in Chicago takes place in sort of a commercial or tourist district near the O'Hare Airport, whereas Anthrocon takes place in the heart of the city in the downtown area. So you could kind of take a gander that one is going to be closer to the city than the other one is. Yeah, I mean, geez Louise, like if you take a subway. Like, I took the train to Midwest Furfest a few years. You go to Grand Central Station, you walk about a block, and you take the subway, and then you have to be in the subway for an hour going west until you hit the convention. So it's not really in the heart of downtown. It's not anywhere. It's like, it is quite a distance from the downtown Chicago. So it is in the Chicago area. Chicago area is pretty large, but it's not in the same place. So I don't think because of that, the interaction with the people in the city is going to be a lot more low-key. And some furries like that. And I think that's going to be part of its distinctiveness. Like, so the people of Pittsburgh, like there's some furries out there who are like, I don't care if people love me. I really don't give a hoot whether or not people love my company or not. I want to be who I am. And I don't need other people acknowledging that I'm awesome or anything like that. So I really... I could really care less. And sometimes those individuals might go, well, the con chair is sacrificing a little bit on our behest in order to make the people of the city comfortable. And if you do that, does that take away from the overall experience of the convention? Are you sacrificing Peter to pay Paul? Sort of an idea. And that's an interesting critique. So you can kind of see both sides sort of playing this sort of idea as to why one convention is better than the other. Some people love and are excited to see, people who are non-furries, embrace furries. Other people are just like, I don't care whether or not they do or not. I'm going to be me, and that's who I am. So, see how this conversation of just a shift of power from one convention to another as being the world's largest opens up an interesting discussion about furries' relationships with cities, with individuals, and all this other stuff. This is why these numbers are so fascinating to me. So before we go, we're going to go to the charts. We're going to go to, I believe it's this one. So the numbers in red on the far left are basically, the ones in red are projections. The one at the very top is Anthrocon. It's an ABC order. Midwest Furfest is in there. I believe it's near the very bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the number because it's no longer a guess. So this was what my guess was. And even with my guess right there, it was going to pass by it this year. So let's see how this changes the chart a little bit. So it's like 7, 7, 5, 5, 4. Hopefully I typed that right. Look at that. You see that movement? You saw that movement, right? So I'm going to do it again just in case you weren't watching. So I'm going to do undo. So this is where, so those top two lines are Anthrocon and Midwest Furfest. If they'd moved to the projected of 8,200, like I said before, Midwest Furfest would have overtaken it this year. Now I'm going to do the redo button, and we're going to watch that number go down. So Anthrocon sort of stagnates a little bit. So projected right now, Midwest Furfest has a higher percent chance of being there. So if you're watching this video, I'm going to tell you this: if you're going to Midwest Furfest this year, you should, like, I know it's, opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies to most of us experienced furs are kind of boring. We kind of know what they're going to talk about, and we can get that information later. But for the love of Pete, if you are going to go to any closing ceremony in your lifetime, you need to go to Midwest Furfest's closing ceremonies for 2017. Because it's not just another number. It's not just another thing. It is a historic event in the fandom where we have grown to the point where we can have competing largest furry conventions after over a decade of one having the cream of the crop, seeming unapproachable from any of its rivals. It's a weird time to be a furry, but it's also sort of exciting. And if you're going to attend that one, I hope to see you there, because I certainly am. I wouldn't miss this one for the world. Woo! I also got to prepare some stuff before that happens. I'm plotting things, all right? I do news coverage, okay? So I have to prepare for an event like that. All right? So thank you very much. I'm going to get the hop out of here. Thank you very much for watching. And kick a like, kick a subscribes button, kick a comment in the comment section. How do you feel about Anthrocon becoming the second largest furry convention in the world? I hope you share your responses, and I hope to see you again right here on this channel. Thank you very much.